African nations want the global community to honor the annual climate finance pledge they gave 14 years ago to provide $100 billion, equivalent of 14.6 trillion shillings. And this was meant for development in many African countries being stifled by the effects of climate change. Now, the Nairobi Declaration, which will be presented in the upcoming COP28, called for a review of the debt financing architecture, restructuring of the existing debts, including granting a 10-year grace period to allow African countries gather enough resources for repayment. Chemtai go in with more.
As the curtains closed on the three-day Pioneer Africa Climate Summit, the heads of state and government present joined President William Ruto in making the Nairobi Declaration that contains the Africa position on how the continent intends to tackle challenges facing it, including climate change, whose financing has left many countries in dire situations.
Let the declaration of our commitment to act in unison and deliver our aspirations go forth in the firm, clear voice of a united Africa from Nairobi today, and tell the world about Africa's youth potential, opportunity, and its capacity to actualize a world of possibility.
While calling the international community to walk the journey of prosperity with them, the African nations demanded accountability from the global north on a $100 billion pledge made at the Copenhagen conference to fund climate change mitigation. They also want major polluters to accelerate efforts to reduce greenhouse gas emissions in line with the Paris Agreement, which recommended phasing out of use of coal, abolishment of fossil fuel subsidies, and the operationalization of the loss and damage fund.
We are therefore determined to have difficult conversations, take hard decisions, and make uncomfortable changes to set international consensus on an Afrocentric and globally inclusive path into an African future.
With a number of countries having defaulted on loans they took from developed countries, the African leaders proposed debt relief interventions. They recommended the extension of the debt repayment period and also instituting a 10-year grace period to allow borrowed funds serve the intended development goals.
At the summit, we also made it clear that we are aware of the unjust configuration of multilateral institutional frameworks that perpetually place African nations on the back foot through costly financing, which plunge our economies into debt trap and deny them resources needed to mitigate and adapt in response to climate change, invest in energy transition, and facilitate industrialization to create jobs and wealth, and to reduce inequality.
The summit also resolving to push for a review of the financing architecture that will respond to the unique needs of the respective African countries.
We demand a fair playing ground for our countries to access the investment needed to unlock the potential and translate it into opportunities. We further demand a just multilateral development finance architecture to liberate our economies from odious debt and onerous barriers to necessary financial resources.
They also expressed their intention to use the upcoming United Nations General Assembly and COP28 to push for the creation of a climate finance charter and to curb carbon, hold account those that are responsible for excessive greenhouse gas emissions. The African leaders adopted the proposal to institute carbon tax targeting fossil fuel trade and maritime transport and aviation. Acknowledging the fact that owing to Africa's growth, it is warming much faster than the rest of the world, the African leaders resolved to create an enabling environment, enact policies and facilitate investments that will unlock resources that will be used to combat climate change, while at the same time contributing to the decarbonization of the rest of the world. Chemutai Goin, Citizen TV at the KICC, Nairobi.